What is going on, guys? Lurking here from Mobilytics. This is Meteor Meatball, and Meteor was once just the biggest piece of shit, and now it's honestly an amazing build. It's solidly an A tier. It's got big dick energy. It's well endowed. It has so much aura. You got your big dick staff here with Shattered Stars, making your meteorites when you drop Meteor. We got, Armageddon for a fucking massive multiplier when you have Inferno active. It's just super strong. We did Hydra. That was fun. That was cool. That was new. Then we did Chain Lightning. That was cool. That was sleek. That was fast. Azarath. Good stuff. And now we're doing just fucking pure aura. That's what Meteor is. So I hope you guys enjoy. This build's fucking dope. All right, so let's go over our gear and armor and some priority on the affixes and stuff. So Starfall Coronet turns your Meteor into a cooldown skill. It's pretty easy to solve, not too big of a deal. They buffed the shit out of it so many times that it's great now. It quadruples your damage, but as a result, the most important thing on here is the unique effect. You want this as close to 2.5 as possible, and then I'd say cooldown reductions the next most important, and then ranks to Meteor. Then we go into Shroud of False Death. This is taken for the +1 to all passives, as well as the all stats and max life. How you masterwork this depends on what your goal is. I'm a bit of a max life boy, but I know a lot of people that are all stats boys and gals. Then we go into Flash Fire Gauntlets. So Flash Fire is a great aspect. It gives us 45% increased pyro crit strike damage. Meteorites and meteorites are technically a pyromancy skill, so we're getting nice damage from it. And it's double this bonus against healthy targets. So that first initial blop is massive. On here, part of this item is correct. The most important thing is the ranks to core skills, then the attack speed, and then instead of intelligence, it should be crit chance. Instead of fire damage, it should be pyromancy attack speed, and then Frost Nova is okay, but if you want to be tankier, you can take barrier generation. Then we run to Ball's Will. The most important thing on here is the aspect value of 20%, so you can get the most damage from your Tranquil Stone, your permanent Unstoppable, and then DR Unstoppable is the next most important, and then max life. You can get pretty tanky from this thing while also getting a ton of damage. This thing is great this season because Unstoppable is so free. Then we go into our boots. Unfortunately, boots are where the Meteor ranks are, so we can't run Flicker Steps to just solve our Inferno cooldown. So we're gonna have to run Orange Herald. We have attacks reduce evade boots. That way, in case we want to swap back and forth between Frost Nova Enchant and Teleport Enchant, as we'll get into later, you can. You're gonna want Intelligence, Armor, and ranks to Mastery skills. The armor is really important. That way, combined with Incense and Elixir and stuff, that we can hit armor cap. And you're going to want Evade CDR and then Barrier Generation. So this whole build's based on the Protection passive. When we cast cooldowns, we get Barrier. So we don't even need Ice Armor. We're just constantly spamming cooldowns. So we have Barrier, permanent Barrier. All right, let's get to the meat and potatoes of the build. This staff is everything. It is our big dick dammy staff, Shattered Stars. So Shattered Stars makes it so when we cast Meteor, meteorites fall around it. They have a flat damage value, this 1287 here. It scales up with meteorite ranks, all that jazz. The most important thing on here is this chance for meteorites, not meteor, meteorites to deal double damage. You're going to want to triple this. I think you can get up to 97%, something like that. It's pretty sweet. And then GA Intelligence, GA Max Life. We have Lucky Hit, chance to restore. That way we can fuel our Quacks Room, which is consuming all our mana to give us a bunch of damage. And we have Pyromancy attack speed. So that way when we are we will hit a point where our Meteor is on perma cooldown. And then we're only limited by our attack speed. So we need a ton of pyro attack speed so we can spam the shit out of it. I behold the God Amulet, Armageddon here. This is why it's a meteorite build. While Inferno's active, we get 540% increased damage. Meteor just can't keep up with this form of scaling. If this said your Meteor deals 540% increased damage, it would be a Meteor build. This amulet's fucking crazy. Int, Glass Cannon, Dev Blaze. You're going to masterwork any combination of Glass Cannon and Dev Blaze, but the most damage is the triple on Dev Blaze, but good luck with that. And then you're going to want Inferno cooldown reduction on every part of the build, and then you're going to need to make a choice between Pyromancy attack speed and Evade CDR. Pyromancy attack speed is going to perform better in the pit. Evade CDR is going to perform better in the teleport enchant setup for farming and stuff. So that's just something that you're going to have to decide. You can't have it all sometimes. We go into Talrasha here. You know, we have frost, shock, and fire on the build. So we're going to get 75% damage out of this here. And the only effects that really matters on here is this cooldown reduction effects. You're gonna want it to be GA, and you're gonna want to triple crit it. And then last but not least, because we're not like spending mana consistently, it's only with the Quacks rune. We don't run Starless, so we're gonna run Shredding Blades here. I don't have Ice Armor in the build, so I can't run Stormswell. And Shredding Blades is just a nice 35% damage, and then it ensures that like when my Ice Blades are fucking off, flying around, that they, you know, they make stuff vulnerable, and they're reducing cooldowns even when they're off their leash doing their own thing. So Shredding Blades is great. And then Int attack speed, crit strike chance, Pyromancy attack speed, Inferno CDR. Ideally, you're gonna want to masterwork like attack speed on here, but I don't really give a shit. I just whatever happens on here. It's this ring. The masterworks aren't that important on this one. All right, so let's get into our elixirs and incense. First is Elixir of Advantage for 15% attack speed. We got to boost this up a bit. We have a lot more than this. It just doesn't show up in the stats sheet because of these Pyromancy attack speed tempers. Then we're going to go for Sage's Whisper for 100 intelligence. You can also use, I think, the chorus one for 60 all stats. That's also good. And then we're going to run Song of the Mountain for 300 armor. And Soothing Spices for another 150 armor. And with enough Paragon and an armor roll on your boots, you should hit armor cap. Worst case scenario, you can always put an extra masterwork onto armor or search for some greater affix armor boots. All right, let's get into our enchantments and seasonal powers for the pit damage setup. So we're going to run double frost enchants. We'll get into that in a second. But first is the crux. You always need Ice Blade enchant. Every 31 seconds in cooldowns, you're going to make an Ice Blade. You can get 3 Ice Blades off the skill bar, 3 from the enchant, for a total of 6. This whole loop is going to reduce your cooldowns with the Roaring Ice Blade. Choppy, choppy, choppy. Spammy, spammy, spammy. Then when we're choppy, choppying, we're going to make Frost Novas. Going to freeze everything for the Hoarfrost passive. And then it's also going to give us 15% damage. Apply vulnerable. And then let's go into our Heraldric powers. So we have Disintegrate, and that is hooked up to our Inferno. We'll get into that in a second. Why? Disintegrate makes that little beam. Anything within it is going to get executed when they're 20% below life. And then if it's a normal mob, it's 40% or below. Then we're going to run Fractured Core so that we can get rid of damage resistance auras. Then we're going to run Tranquil Stone so that we can have permanent unstoppable for our Tybalt's Will. Now, when we get into the Smoldering Ember Infusion here, while equipped, your fire damage bonus is equal to that of your highest damage type bonus. That is why we have the double frost enchants. We get 68% damage with cold. And then when we combine that with the Enchantment Master Legendary Note here, we're going to get 68% damage with cold from the 2 enchants. And then we're going to convert that, not convert, but we're going to copy that onto fire so we can get 68% damage with fire. Then let's get into our gems here. So the reason that we have our catalytic skill on Inferno down here is so that when we cast it, we can get 30% attack speed for 10 seconds with Myriad Stone. This doesn't keep stacking up, but it keeps refreshing itself. It's very nice. Then we're going to run Scornful Light for 20% more elemental damage. Great stuff. And then we're going to run Idle from Below purely for the 6% primary core stat and the 6% max life. We get Unhindered, and the Unhindered is actually really good in this setup. And then we get Jewel Guardians too, which are really nice for the pit for getting additional progress so we can reach the boss faster. All right, so let's talk about our enchantments for the speed setup. What's changed? You know, in our damage setup, we had Frost Nova for Big Danny, and now we're going to run Teleport Enchantment for going real fast. With the Smoldering Ember Infusion, you're only going to get 40% damage out of this because it's just looking for the highest. We got 40 cold, 40 lightning. So you're just going to get 40, but we don't really need the damage. I'm going to run Propulsion. If you don't like the pushback, you can just run Cosmic Anomaly. I slot it on Meteor. We'll get more into that later, but every time we cast Meteor, every 3.3 seconds, we're going to get a nice little teleport, a nice little blink here. And that's because of Floaty Bobble. We're going to get Unhindered. It's going to get rid of all of our negative effects. We're going to get 70% move speed, so that we're just, you know, perma at move speed cap. And then we're also going to get permanent unstoppable for our Tybalt's Will, all that jazz, super good stuff. Let's go into our gems here. So the only thing that's changed, you know, we're still running Scornful Light for 20% damage. We're still going to run Idle from below for the unhindered, the main stat, all that stuff. It's really just for the main stat and max life, honestly. But we are going to run, instead of the Myriad Stone for the attack speed, because we don't want it on our Inferno anymore. When you're farming, the enemies aren't as dense. They're a little bit more sparse. So you're not going to have that whole crazy Ice Blades loop going. So it's good to take, what's this one called? Liminal Eye. So your catalytic skill gains 25% cooldown reduction, and that's not our propulsion. That's the skill that the catalytic converter, the catalytic thing, is actually on, and that's on our Meteor. So I go from 1.29 down to 0.9 seconds so that you don't have to wait as long, and you can spam Meteor more, you get more movement with propulsion. It's just really good stuff. So that's just a little swap that we do. Alright, so let's talk about our runes for the mythic setup. So first, I've been on a huge Nagu and Cry kick here. Every 5 seconds, we're going to get 600 offering because of all these summons that we have. This has a really good offering amount for the amount of time that it takes to get it. So it's going to be a huge slurp up with our Spiritborn Vortex. We're going to suck all the enemies on top of us, and then we're going to blast the living shit out of them with our Dinosaur Extinction Meteors. And then, as we're casting our Dinosaur Extinction Meteors, because they are a cooldown skill and everything in the build's a cooldown, every 8 times we cast the cooldown, we're going to get 100% damage for 1 second. And, you know, we can get, this is just going off all the time. And then thanks to our little lucky hit chance to restore roll on our staff here, we're going to have, you know, our mana back all the time. Easy peasy. All right, let's talk about the runes for the speed farm setup. We don't need the damage from Quacks, so we're going to drop it for Sec. That way we can have better uptime on our Inferno, because when we're speed farming, enemies are falling over. We're not getting as many Ice Blade chops to reduce our cooldowns. We're not getting as many Orange Herald hits. In the same light, because we have dropped our Frost Nova enchant for teleport, you know, I still want Frost Nova in the build for the freeze, for the Hoarfrost passive, and for the extra damage. So I run Igni and Thul, just a pretty good generator rune with Igni, and then I can control when my Thul goes off. Say I'm waiting for a boss to spawn or something like that. So this is a nice combination, and it fulfills some of the needs of the build. All right, let's talk about the pit setup for our skill tree here. 2 points in Firebolt to progress. We need 4 points in cores, and none of these really do anything for us. So I have 1 in Elemental Dominance. Meteor is a core skill, but the Meteorites are not. They are just tagged as Pyromancy skills, so they don't benefit from this. And then I have Potent Warding so that nobody complains to me about resistances. So I got those short up, baby. And then we have 1 point in Flame Shield just to get it on the bar. We're going to just take the bare minimum in Teleport. We're after the Shimmering here for 30% damage reduction. Then we're going to go for Glass Cannon to max out, just get a ton of damage out of this. No points in Ice Armor. We're not running that. And then because the pit setup is running Frost Nova enchant, we just need the bare minimum to hit Mystical Frost Nova to get 15% damage. Then we're going to go for Ice Blades. We're going to go for the Roaring Ice Blades to fuel the whole build. 20% of enhanced Ice Blades cooldown applies to all of our skills. Chop, chop, chop. Cooldown, cooldown, cooldown. Brusha, brusha, brusha. Marsha, marsha, marsha. We're going to go into Protection here. This is how we're generating all of our barrier. You know, and then with our barrier gen, you know, we're going to get 70, you know, 60, 70, 80% max life barrier every time that we cast a cooldown, which we're doing so frequently. And then we have Primordial Binding here to increase our mana regeneration to help with our Quacks rune and give us some movement speed. If you find out you don't need this, you can always take this out and put it into, you know, Energy Focus so that you can, you know, really hit up that 100% max life barrier, and that's up to you. Then I run Mana Shield. Fortunately, I'm only able to get 2 ranks in here. From the skill tree itself, just to get some damage reduction after our Quacks rune spends a bunch of mana. We're going to max out Meteor, Enhanced Meteor, yada yada. I go for Mages because it looks cooler, so you can get 30%, they fall 30% faster. I like it. But, you know, if you want more boss dagger, you go Wizards so that the Meteors are immobilizing. But Meteorites immobilize, so I don't find it that necessary. We're going to go for Inner Flames just for damage while healthy. And then Devouring Blaze. This is the best passive for the build. 10% damage per rank for crit strike damage. Cool. We're going to go into our Frost passives here. So 24% damage with Frost skill on the action bar. Hoarfrost, 24% damage when enemies are frozen. You know, we're either running the Frost Nova rune or we're running Frost Nova enchant. So like everything's always frozen. Then we have Icy Touch just for damage vulnerable enemies. Elemental Synergies give us a little bit of extra damage for Pyromancy skill on the bar. And then Evocation for cooldown reduction. We're going to max out Inferno here. It's gonna provide a bit of a pull. But it's not enough for Pit for me because we're not like giga spamming Inferno. So I really need the Cry rune on this. and then Supreme Inferno so that we can get 50% more damage. And then, you know, when we hit that 5-ring bonus, it's going to make everything vulnerable that it touches. Then we're going to go for Soulfire here. We're just going to get a little bit more damage out of here. This passive isn't that important because we're really not standing like still the whole time. So you can kind of delegate these points elsewhere if you want. Like I was saying with Energy Focus or with, you know, Teleport, something like that. So that's sort of up to you. These 4 points are a bit of a flex. You can even dump these into Warmth if you like want a lot of survivability. So there's some flex here. And then last but not least, Asus Ferocity is our key passive. This key passive can be a little bit spotty, but it's okay. Meteor hits pretty hard, so it's got pretty good uptime. You're killing stuff with crits a lot. You know, you get 75% damage and 40% crit strike chance pretty frequently when you're mobbing. And then bossing, it's always active, so this thing's just like a boss slayer. I'm so tired of talking, but Paragon. So we're going to start with the starter board with Pyromaniac, Rare Node Booster, Non-Fizz, all that jazz. And then it's going to increase our Pyromancy skill damage by 18%, and then increase our fire damage by another 10%. Really great glyph. The best. Then we're going to go into Elementalist, another staple. Another Rare Node Booster for our Non-Fizz, damage to elites. And then from the additional bonus, we're going to get between 10 to 15% damage on enemies, and then 10.4% Non-Fizz. Enchantment Master Legendary Node, the bane of my existence, explaining. For Iceblade and Frostnova enchant, they're going to go off more frequently. If you have Teleport enchant, it's going to lower the evade CDR of it, so you're going to be able to teleport more frequently. The Smoldering Ember Infusion allows us to take other elemental damage that we get bonus on here and shove it onto fire. So, like I said earlier, when I'm running the double cold enchants, I get 68% damage because they multiply into each other. I get 68% damage with cold. That goes onto my fire is 68. When I have Teleport and Ice Blades, I get 40%, and I move that onto my fire. So it's looking for the highest bonus. Searing Heat here, 60% direct damage, 15% crit strike chance. And then we take Tactician here, Rare Node Booster for our crit strike damage and our fire damage. 15% damage after casting a defensive skill. And because we only have 2 defenses on the bar, this is going to last for like 12 or, you know, I think it's 12 seconds. It's a lot. And then we're going to get another 10% flat damage at the bottom. Then we go into Fundamental Release, which is going to give us 50% damage for, you know, applying Vulnerable, Burning, or Critically Striking. We don't care about the ultimate damage bonus. We go for Destruction. Gives us a large amount of crit strike damage, and then 12% and 14.2% crit strike damage, multiplicative. Then we go into Frigid Fate. This is going to give us 1.6x damage to vulnerable enemies. And last but not least, we are going to take Flame Feeder here for a little bit of damage to burning additive. We don't really care too much about that, but we're after this 10% X non-fizz and this 10.4% X damage. So, like, what's next, you might ask? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a blizzard by the toe. Thank you for the quad GA. Blue Rose, Roxy, I really appreciate it. Probably one of the 7 people that's going to try and play Blizzard. If you don't see a Blizzard video, it's because the build was ass, and I'm probably done for the season. Peace.